So thank you, everybody. I'm Noah Mallin. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at IMGN. We're a Warner Music company, and we are their Gen Z content lab and marketing specialists. So I'm really excited for this panel. Before we jump into the panel, though, I'd love to hear from everybody out in the audience. When I say NFT, what do you guys think about? What's the first thing that comes to mind? And don't try to be nice about it. Like, go ahead and shout it out. It's fine. Did I hear scam? A sham? That's good. Fresh. Anything else? What was that? Oh, mocking. Yes. Got it. Okay. Fraudulent. Oh man, that's rough stuff, right? So NFTs are getting a bad rap. When I spoke to somebody actually on Twitter, a friend of mine, and said, "Oh, this is the panel I'm doing," he said, "Is that still a thing?" And I was like, "Oh man, that's really rough." Okay, but so NFTs are getting a bad rap right now. And that's happening not just with NFTs, it's happening with crypto. There's a lot happening in the marketplace. So this really fascinated me, and talking to these folks will really be interesting because the question at hand that we're going to try to answer here is, can NFTs actually be something for good? Can they transcend this idea that they're kind of a bubble and actually be something that leads to something else that can have an outcome that's a positive outcome? And I think when you start to hear about Firewatch and start to hear about what these folks did, it'll be really interesting. And I'm hoping you'll be engaged and ask them some questions. So without further ado, I just want each of these folks to introduce themselves. Ashley, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Ashley Lamontagne. I'm the B2B marketing manager at One Tree Planted. We are a reforestation nonprofit that has been working with Y Media Labs, and Will, pass it to you.
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Will Leivenberg. I'm the Director of Brand Marketing at YML. We're a technology and design agency. We build and design experiences for everyone from Home Depot to Albertsons to Yeti to Thrive Market and Polestar. If I opened up any of your phones, I'm sure we built or designed that thing. And I run global brand strategy for our agency.
Hi everyone, my name is John. I'm the tech lead on the NFT team at the Solana Foundation. Solana Foundation is a nonprofit tasked with helping grow the actual Solana network, the adoption of it, increasing the amount of users, use cases, the number of validators, and making sure it's decentralized and secure. So we help guide companies through their journey to Web3 and understand what it's capable of, and especially how Solana can help them on their journey to create real value for consumers.
Awesome. So these are three really different sets of expertise that kind of intersected for this. So Will, do you want to describe what Firewatch is and what it's about and how it came about?
Yeah, cool. I doubt anyone here knows about Firewatch. If you do, I'm ecstatic. Firewatch is a project that is very close to my agency's heart. These folks were partners in the project, and essentially, YML built a bespoke Web3 platform that uses NFTs to fight wildfire in California. Is anyone confused? It's fair, it's fine, I get it. But essentially, I imagine you all work with creative directors. I have an amazing creative director on my team. We were working through a problem. We really wanted to build something that was not just for a client. We didn't need to solve another RFP. We wanted to do something humanitarian. We wanted to use our superpowers of technology and design for good. We knew NFTs were a thing. We knew everyone was talking about Web3, metaverse, blah, blah, blah. But we said, how do we do this for good? Our creative director is from a place called Mount Shasta. If anyone is driven up to California, up on the 5, that is unfortunately a very apocalyptic drive now. The lush green that he grew up with, he was taking his little girls on a drive. It is now dystopian, right? Fires have ravaged that area. And he turned to his wife, and as creative directors do, said something very insightful. He said, in the United States, you can adopt a highway, but you can't adopt a forest. And all of a sudden, something clicked for him. He and I started a conversation. We started reaching out to folks like One Tree Planted and Solana, because what we wanted to do was turn the state of California into a buyable experience that invests back into the land. We turned California into 1,000 digital NFTs, each of which is a 16 by 16 square mile footprint. So essentially, let's say Ashley went to Malibu once with her family and really wants to protect Malibu and invest there. Malibu needs something different from a preservation standpoint than Mendocino County or San Francisco or Palm Springs. So when she buys her NFT, 100% of that purchase is going to go back into a project that One Tree Planted has found and is running for us. And so to date, we launched the project in September. We've sold, I think, about 40 or 50 NFTs so far, which I know doesn't sound like a ton, but that has safeguarded more than 10,000 square miles of land in California. So that's the promise here. That's super exciting.
That's really cool. So, John, how does the blockchain play into this, and what's important about what you are doing with the blockchain that's different from what others might be doing?
Yeah, I think this one's really important for us. Solana is really energy efficient, really fast, really inexpensive. The goal there is not to create exclusive digital assets or things that are just inaccessible because they're too expensive. We want to be able to have people using the blockchain and being able to actually afford to be able to do all these things. And I think the key part of this is thinking about like the assets going on chain and thinking about how then they can be interacted with in different ways, right? So Firewatch is one part of that story. One Tree Planted is one part of that story, but you don't need permission from them to continue that story, right? YML doesn't have to exist for that to happen. One Tree Planted doesn't have to exist for that to happen. These NFTs can continue to live on in this network. It's very decentralized. 3,000 validators all around the world. Confirmations in something like 1.5 seconds and a fraction of a cent to actually do anything on the chain. That completely changes how people can consider blockchain and what they can do with it. Because now it's not this like holy grail of like, I need $3,000 to do something today. It's something that anyone can use day to day.
And do you mind if I add real quick?
Please.
The beautiful thing about Solana, eco-friendly, right? So every single NFT transaction is carbon offset. So for marketing folks in the room, you're probably like, oh my God, NFTs, the whole thing, it's perceived like just garbage, right? It's speculative, it's all the hype. But now we have this through line of the experience where it's actually doing good. It does not follow that line of, being bad for the environment. And I just want to share real quick. At my company, which has 65% engineers and technologists, when we first talked about doing Firewatch and an NFT project, there was a near mutiny. Like, engineers do not like NFTs. They think they're bullshit. Sorry. But we turned that around, right? And that's what was sort of exciting about this, sort of flipping the script to say, what if we didn't perceive of it that way? And when you get the right partners in the room too, we actually were able to do it, which is exciting.
That's really cool. So, Ashley, this seems like must be a really different way to support One Tree Planted. Is this typical of the way that you get support? And now that it's started, if it's not typical, do you see yourselves doing more projects like this?
Yeah, it actually is kind of a new space here that we're doing is forest fire prevention. So we're One Tree Planted. Our model is restoring and planting trees in areas that have been affected by deforestation, wildfires, obviously, and just general things that have caused the land to degrade. But when we plant these trees, they're really important, but they also can take decades to get to the place where they're grown and mature to look like the forest that was there before. And those forests that were there before were so important. They hosted all different kinds of habitats. They're an important ecosystem. They're great for the climate, the community. So protecting those forests and making sure that we're saving them and they're not burning down is really important work. But it was a new space for us. And when Will came in and was like, we really want to work on protecting this land. You guys are kind of the experts here in forestry. What can we do? We were like, okay, well, this is a new space for us. This is a new space for you. Why don't we kind of take this on together and do some really important work? And it was a really good gateway. It's something we want to do more of now, but this was like a really great intro into that space.
So that's a great jumping off point, thinking about this project and the success that you've had with it so far, and this is for all of you, do you see this as kind of a future path, or at least a direction to go in with NFTs as kind of a funding device for all kinds of social good? Does that feel like that's a possibility?
I think so, for sure. I mean, I did have enough calls with prospective partners who said, oh, so it's a donation platform. But it's for sure not a donation platform. It's the Web3 version in some people's eyes. But I think what's really important is, again, if you think about it from the perspective of doing good, this allowed us to build a community of reciprocity. That's the game changer, right? All of a sudden, people feel like they're part of something that's going to have shared value for a lot of people, as opposed to the perspective that I'm sure most of us hold, which is, okay, I'm going to buy this NFT. Now I have to watch it and hope I get more in 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years or whatever it might be. And plus, we learned as much as we could about the audience and about that world. The NFT world expects you to be transparent, expects you to be consistent. They have an amazing bullshit radar. So Firewatch can't be the last project that we do, right? How does Firewatch become Rivers Watch or Mountains Watch, right? Find another cause meant to do good, and really utilize the best of that space.
Just to add a little bit there too, I think that the way that these NFTs are constructed, all of it's very immutable. So immutable meaning that, hey, if something shuts down, this thing doesn't go away, right? How many brands and companies have we seen shut down and know their services no longer work? There's URLs don't ever resolve anymore. So I think there's one part of that, which is being able to sort of memorialize some of these things on chain. I think the transparency thing is huge too. Like how, where does our money actually go when we donate to different causes and different nonprofits? Being able to see that actually move on chain and be able to verify all of that information, I think is super valuable. And then I also think a little bit about the sort of ongoing, I think of it as patronage, right? It's less about purchasing a thing and only having it. It is now something that you can associate with your identity. We heard a little bit before about sort of the 2030 vision of yourself, this identity as your digital part of the identity. I think the key part of that is that you can choose. You can choose what to represent outward and how that's going to be perceived by folks that are targeting brands or ads or things like that. And this is an opportunity to show your patronage in a way that doesn't mean that you're logging into this website to say, hey, look here, I donated a thing. It's a piece that I can take with me to any other platform and be able to share that if that's something I desire to do.
Yeah, Will, you mentioned community, and I thought that was kind of interesting. Do you see this developing into a community where, once people opt into, Firewatch or any sort of project like this, that they continue to be not just connected to the project, but to each other?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to believe that NFTs and Web3 are going to sort of change the game when it comes to loyalty. And loyalty through community. There was a Slack conversation started in our design channel yesterday. People started going off about what's your favorite loyalty program? Hilton Rewards, Chipotle, Starbucks, right? American Express, the OG. All of that is actually not that dissimilar from what Kayla was just talking about, right? How does this one purchase then unlock something that gives you exclusive experience, exclusive merch, content, access to the, physical event? Same idea, right? Just for this more Web3 world.
So, John, having that connected to the blockchain gives you this kind of unique identity within a community. So just to build off what Will was saying, it sounds like there's a lot of potential to kind of look at NFTs as a gateway to experiences, VIP experiences, other things that you might think about within a loyalty program construct. Is that the right way to think about it?
In some senses, I do think that profiles and identity are a really big part of what people are trying to represent. The metaverse is not quite, at least to me, is not quite a place that you go, right? It's not slapping on goggles and suddenly you're somewhere else, because that just feels closed off. The metaverse to me is our physical world where our digital identities are slowly getting merged with our physical selves. Like that's something that's only happened in the last 10 or 20 years, is understanding what our digital selves, what we choose to represent ourselves can be. So this is sort of the natural evolution of what that looks like to me. And I think, so having the community part I think is really cool. I think the other part is like that you don't need to ask permission for that to happen. If I want to reward everyone who has ever purchased a Firewatch thing with some sort of access, like you said, to an event for everyone who's doing these things, I can do that. I don't need to ask Firewatch to do that, because maybe they're busy or maybe they're doing something else. It's like I can create those kinds of rewards and incentives for folks, and you can mix and match that and create this multiplayer experience. Like thinking about any brand, like working with one other brand is really difficult. Think about doing that with 20 brands, right? But that's where consumer value is. You want to be able to say, hey, I care about California. How can I roll this out to every single California-based company? It would be impossible to do unless you're sharing some sort of data layer. And I think that part is really interesting because now it's not guarded by one company saying, hey, like you need to use Facebook or something like that, and we're the only people that holds this data. Now everyone can participate in that, and it's actually a lot more inclusive because we're sharing all of that data.
And that's that transparency piece that we were talking about. Ashley, you know, when John was talking about the metaverse, and this might seem like a strange question, but it got me to thinking. I think one of the things that's interesting about this project is you're using something that people think of as being a virtual item or virtual currency, but having an impact in the real world. When you hear about some of the more grandiose metaverse projects and like Meta themselves are here talking about what the metaverse can be, do you ever get a sense of frustration given that what you're doing is really about the world that we live in and trying to, you know, maintain and restore that?
Yeah, and I think as a marketer myself, I kind of see it as an opportunity. You know, I think that there's people coming onto this platform or into this experience, and they're expressing themselves and what they love. And I think that finding a way to connect that more to real life, like as John was saying, like merging that physical and that digital identity together, it provides us really cool links. So I think there's a bigger opportunity to have experiences in Web3 in the metaverse that can then have an impact in real life, so that it kind of has this extra element and this extra feel good of being like, you know, I have this one space in here that I'm interacting with, but it's having an impact in the real world.
So when Will kind of connected with you and bought this idea, did you have to do a lot of internal like explanation and selling to kind of get your organization on board?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. We get reached out to by a lot of NFTs, and oftentimes it will be someone who's kind of looking to use us for like promotion in our audience, and then plant a couple trees. So it doesn't seem like thoroughly authentic in some ways. But what was so unique and interesting about how Will did it is he came to us in the very beginning and was like, you know, we want at the foundation of this for it to make a difference and have an impact. So that was kind of where we started. And then he was like, we want to partner with you, and you're the forestry experts. Like, tell us how we can achieve this goal and make a difference. And we'll kind of move in that direction and try to do that together. So it really felt super authentic. It felt like this was something different than what we had seen. And it was something that was actually like going to make a difference in the world, and really make a difference for our projects. So I think just that partnership and that relationship made us feel like, you know, this is something that's worth it for us. And as soon as like we showed that experience, I mean, it's really killer. Everybody should check it out. Everyone was super excited about it and like what it could offer. So
very cool. Well,
I was just gonna hype it one more time because that's my way. I apologize. Every single NFT that you see on there is not done by an artist. I wish it were, but check this out. It's done by a script that is ingested with NASA satellite imagery, Google imagery, and topographical mapping of different tree species across California. So it's a wild experience in that way, and the art could be in this room over here. It's gorgeous, right? And then that art obviously becomes something that you can own too, something that you can track the impact of. Because again, you know, if you're in San Francisco where I live, or down where my folks live in Los Angeles, the need is very different, right? There's been 4 million acres burned between 2020 and 2021, which is an ominous, awful record in the last few years. This approaches that right away and says, we can go in and do biodiversity work. We can go in and do replanting of trees. We can go in and make a difference with wildlife protection. There's so many different needs across California. And I think, again, that's where we don't know that stuff. We build stuff, design stuff, we lead your strategy, and we bring it to life. This person and her team, they know that stuff. They are the experts. And then he does his thing over here too, I promise. But yeah, it was an incredible partnership. Very cool, felt innovative and different. And I think the fact that you can track the difference, as John has said too, that transparency element is what is the game changer.
So where do we send people who want to learn more?
Firewatch.fund is all you got to do right now. Dive in, check it out. Great on mobile, even better on desktop. Fast as hell to buy your NFT. But the other thing I just want to say is, and John was critical in helping us with this at the outset, is if you've bought an NFT before, I have to imagine it feels like a digital storefront, right? Here's the NFTs. You click on one and then you get sent to a page and you buy it. This is meant to be a super immersive experience. It's meant to give you background on this immersive map that drops you into different areas of California so that you can then learn a little bit about, okay, the fuel reduction need is massive in Mendocino County. And if we don't do something about it, here's how long we're gonna have in that area versus, right, the need somewhere else and the difference that you can make. And then the NFT purchase, 100%, like I said, goes to One Tree Planted, and then 50% of the resale, again, goes to One Tree Planted. So trying to tap into what is native to that community.
Awesome. So I think we have time for questions, and I'd love to hear from you all out there if you want to know more. Okay, I see a hand up in the back row. Do we have a mic? Or you can be really loud.
Yeah, I can't compete with this fan over here behind me. But I love the cause because one of the questions when you initially talked about, what do you think about when you think about NFTs, to someone who's inexperienced, it's like, well, what do I do with this, right? Why did I buy this? Can it somehow live on my wall in sort of a digital frame potentially, and then I can show people that? How can I share it? So I love the fact that you're providing meaning behind it. But talk about sort of the evolution in terms of what I can do with it and why it's necessary and where you see the future of it.
I'll go and then you go maybe, and then you can. First and foremost, thank you. Great question. And my boss said that to me when we pitched this idea too. Now what, essentially? And I said, fair point. So first of all, if you want to print this thing out, go on and buy one. I'll send it to you. I'll frame yours for you, okay? It is gorgeous. It is art. You can do it digitally if you want, but I promise you this thing is stunning. I do think also, I recently donated to the Red Cross. That was great. I'm not really sure where that money went. I believe I did something good, felt good. But now what? A little bit, right? Your money with that NFT is trackable for you to a super specific project that Ashley and her team have found, which again could support an array of causes based on what that region in California needs. So that's one specific piece for you. And I think again too, there is that do-gooder feeling. I mentioned you're joining a community in reciprocity. You are giving back to something that, as Ashley said, the tree we plant in your name, basically, maybe our kids will see it, but their kids definitely will, right? And California, when you guys all visit from here to get away from this wild heat outside, by the way, what is happening? This is why I'm from California. But really, that's going to be the difference maker,
I think from the NFT side of things, the key difference to me here is, one is that not all NFTs are speculative, and nor should they be. It's just a technology that allows us to create identifiers for different assets. This can be used to help track provenance of art, like some of the things that we see here, and track resale value. Sure, that's the first most tangible use case, but it can be used to represent a whole lot of other things that don't involve the transfer or sale of digital assets. For example, your credentials. Maybe you got a diploma from somewhere, but how do you get that diploma? You got to pay your university to like send a diploma to someone else, but you already earned it. It should be yours, no matter whether or not that university exists or that company exists that provided that asset, right? So I think one is that it's a thing that is now on the blockchain that will forever be there as proof that this was a thing that you did that you can attribute back to yourself. And I think it's also something, again, that like a lot of what the cryptography part of it, that part that's really interesting is the ability to prove to somebody else that something that is digital is in fact yours. That's, you have your key pair, right? And in this case, it means that, again, if you want to say, hey, I'm a contributor to Firewatch, how do you prove this? The only way that you could do this on a Web 2 system is you log into Firewatch or some other website on your computer with your password, right? But here we can say, hey, you can actually prove that this exists on the blockchain, and now I can know that you have this, along with the other 5 plots of land that you've been supporting as well. So it's sort of like this, again, it comes back to identity and thinking about it, NFTs as more like a marker of digital things rather than thinking about it as speculative things.
And I will say quickly on like the impact front, when you're making that initial purchase and donating to this project, that work that's going to be happening on the ground is going to make like a significant difference for the time to come just because of how it is. You know, we're talking about things like thinning of tree stands that are overcrowded and can go up really quickly. We're talking about removing like things that have a very vegetation with very high fuel loads. We're talking about things that can cause fires to be really bad and take out whole areas. So by doing that work and supporting that work, you're supporting these trees in their protection for years to come. It could make a huge difference in the landscape. So it feels good to think that everything's connected in that way.
Yeah, hi. So just for John, you know, in a world where truth and provenance and, you know, fake news and all this seems like such perfect use cases for blockchain, and, you know, it's been around for some time right now, the technology, what is holding it back from really becoming more mainstream for real issues, tangible, like elections, for example? No one can say fake election if you could put the voting rights through the blockchain. So what's holding it back, and what can brands do, we as brands, you know, do with blockchain to use it for things that we think would make sense for provenance and whatnot?
Great question. I think a lot of this comes down to censorship, right? Like what kind of data is available to be seen, and what things are being exposed to, and is there other data being available, right? So to the extent that Solana is a permissionless, decentralized network, the thing that is really important about that is censorship resistant. This means that anyone can independently run a validator and prove that the things that have happened. So it's none of this like, you know, history written by the victors kind of thing. Everyone's participating in this. In this world, now if something gets on the blockchain, it cannot be taken out and it's immutable. That can't be overridden by somebody saying, hey, I don't like this view of the world. So when we think about something like news, it's, hey, this actually is a place for all kinds of news. And maybe as a brand or as a company, I'm focusing on this part, but you're not blocking out the other part, the part that you don't want to see, right? And when you have a comparison and you know that there is something else that's there, then you have an understanding of what that transparency is super valuable. And that applies for everything, right? This means that the message or the news that you're working on can't be censored by the platform that it's on. Maybe they do. Maybe they censor that particular thing, but it's available for other platforms. So if one platform's not serving you, you can take your data and go somewhere else. And that's the point, is the ability to choose the different options depending on what you think is the most valuable for you, instead of always having to be beholden to some of these walled gardens where it's like their data is the most valuable. Here, it's everyone, you can take your data wherever you want it to. Why can't you do that yet? Oh, so the other thing, and this was mentioned earlier, is like a lot of the crypto parts, a lot of the like engineering parts, that part gets a little scary and a little spooky, especially when you see the news, like things are happening, blah, blah, blah. But I think a big part of it is like streamlining that user experience, because like no one really needs to know what a seed phrase is. We want people to have control over their own data, but it doesn't mean that you need to know the ins and outs of cryptography, and I think that's where we're missing it. The second part is consumer value, right? I talked about multiplayer experiences. We want to be able to find true business value, and it's so early that people are saying like, hi, my brand has sold a lot of NFTs, but I'm not working with anybody else. That's sort of, it's an okay usage of blockchain, but it's not the best usage. The best usage is global cooperation at scale. How do we get as many people working together as possible? That's consumer value that cannot be delivered in other places. So in what ways can your brand work with 10, 15, 500 other brands in a really scalable way across the world? That's true value that consumers will want. They don't need to know that it's powered by blockchain. Like the Solana Foundation does not care. I don't need to have our name up in front. If it's delivering value to users and consumers, perfect. That's exactly what we want. It'll be mainstream when I think when people who have no understanding of crypto get the value from it. And so I think this is big product. This is products being built with that in mind for humans, not for computers. And I think that's where we'll start to see a lot more mainstream usage when it's something that everyone has on their phones.
And there have been some pretty radical experiments, even beyond experiments, with using the blockchain to create financial transparency in ways. I want to say Estonia, I think, has been pushing. Is it Estonia? I might be wrong. But have experimented with citizenship based on blockchain verification, and even having that level down into people's financial details, from taxation to benefits, all being completely visible. So it may happen in different places more quickly, probably.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No, I actually have one. I'm gonna invoke my MC privilege on this one.
MC override.
Yes. Well, your Estonia example is really interesting. I guess for the group, how do you balance the upside of everything you just described, John? I think it's awesome. With, candidly, governments do some shitty things. I don't know if you're watching like what's happening in China, for example, right? Like, here's your digital health passport all tied to the chain. Oh, we're gonna lock you out of your apartment. Oh, we're gonna lock you out of your house. Oh, we're gonna send you to a camp. How do you balance the centralization of it with clearly the impending regulation, which is probably needed in the wake of SBF, but not so much regulation that you end up like the CCP?
Yeah, this is a really good point. I think two parts of this. Again, transparency and censorship resistance. I think in a place like China, and I'm really walking on thin ice here, but I think and that maybe that's even worse. Anyway, so I think the key thing there is thinking about what kind of, again, coming back to what data is being presented and in what ways can we verify. And I think blockchains are exactly perfect for that use case where anyone can come in and verify the data that's out there. And I think that's really a key piece that's really useful. Same with transparency. Something like FTX is a traditional finance company that happens to have a lot of great crypto rails. We have zero transparency into that until it gets so bad that it blows up this part of the industry. If that was a decentralized finance protocol, you'd all be able to see exactly how it works because the protocols exist. There are smart contracts on chain. We can see how these assets go in and out, and that would be very obvious much sooner, right? So I think these actually reinforce the kinds of things that we want to build blockchains for, which is to protect people's data, their privacy in a lot of cases, but also their sovereignty, so that they're not beholden to one or many parties like controlling the things that are happening. Anyone can participate in that network.
The other piece I would just add, because I think that was very well said, is sometimes if there's a deeper experience, ideally, folks feel more engaged. They know what they're part of. And I think for marketers in the room, I imagine that's all you're thinking about all the time, is not just like this landing page that'll drive people to check out, right? There needs to be more. There needs to be more thought and intention. And I think, again, thinking through all the different levers that you can pull to bring the experience to life in an authentic way makes the difference.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you. Please.
One thing, I do know that from the marketing perspective, the green impact is really important, and something that hits a lot of flags in a lot of cases. The Solana Foundation commissions independent energy reports. We do it every 3 months or so. All that data is open source. You can see exactly how they're approaching it. It's obviously not us doing this thing, and despite, obviously, we'll have some bias, I think there's some great numbers on there. A Solana transaction is about half of a Google search on average. We can run the Solana network and do 10 million transactions with the same amount of energy that it takes to do one Bitcoin transaction. So it's like the kind kind of scale and magnitude and the capability of the Solana chain is way different than people expect, and you may be surprised to hear a lot of these things. I would check out the energy report. I think it's that's a big piece. We talked about carbon neutrality. We offset all of the actual impact of the network itself, and we'll continue to do that for the years to come.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I just want to thank John and Will and Ashley. Thank you, Brand Innovators. This was great. And we'll all be around if other people have questions later on. Thank you.
Yeah, straight.